Association for Manufacturing Excellence webinar titled Building the Fit Organization. I am Jerry Strohmeyer, the Education and Training Program Coordinator for AME, and I will be your moderator. Our presenter today is Dan Markovitz, President of Markovitz Consulting, a firm that helps organizations become faster, stronger, and more agile through the application of lean principles to knowledge work. Dan is a faculty member at the Lean Enterprise Institute and teaches at the Stanford University Continuing Studies program. He also lectures at the Ohio State University's Fisher School of Business. Dan has written 2 books, A Factory of One, and most recently, Building the Fit Organization. Both books have been honored with the Shingo Research Award. Before we start, just a couple of housekeeping items. You will be in listen-only mode throughout the webinar. You will see that you are muted on your attendee panel on the right side of your screen. If you have questions during the webinar, please type them into your question area in the attendee panel and click on Submit. We'll review the questions at the end of today's presentation and answer as many as we can. When you log off today, please check your email inbox, and it will be an invitation and link to fill out a short webinar attendee survey. Please take a few minutes to complete the survey today, as your feedback is very important to us to improve future webinars. Dan has also graciously agreed to provide a PDF of today's presentation. We will be sending that along with a recorded link for a webinar replay to each of you next week. Now, I am pleased to introduce Dan Markovitz, who will present Building the Fit Organization. Take it away, Dan.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much, Jerry. Just from a logistical standpoint, I plan on talking for maybe 45 minutes or so, perhaps 50 on the outside, and then having plenty of time at the end for Q&A, because I think some of the most valuable discussion happens when it's an interaction between you and I, you collectively and I, rather than me talking at you. So thank you so much for joining me for Building a Fit Organization. And the reason I wrote this book is that people, when we talk about lean, we always talk about Toyota. And there's a good reason for that, of course. Toyota really is the apotheosis of what lean is all about. But I think that it creates 2 problems. First of all, a lot of people actually don't want to hear about a car company because they work in a bank, or they work in a hospital, or they work in a fast food company or something like that. And so when we start talking about Toyota, and I'm sure many of you have run into this, people sit back in their chairs, they fold their arms, they think, why are you telling me about cars? We don't make cars, we make Pop-Tarts. So we've already lost them, or we've created a hurdle to understanding the concepts that you and I both know are applicable to anyone in any kind of environment. The second issue, and the second problem with talking about Toyota, is that frankly, they're just too advanced. They've been doing it for 65 years. They're the best at this that has ever been. And from my perspective, it's very similar to talking about, say, Michael Phelps. If you wanted to start, if I said, well, here's Michael Phelps. He's won 18 gold medals. He's won 22 medals overall in the Olympics, and you should start training like him. You're going to fail. You're going to get injured. You're going to be demoralized. You'll be frustrated. It's pointless to talk about Michael Phelps if you've never been in the pool for more than, say, 50 yards or 100 yards. Or, and I used to be a competitive runner, distance runner. This is Mo Farah. He is a double Olympic gold medalist. This is him in the most recent Olympics. He has 4 World Championship gold medals in the 5 and 10,000 meters. And if I said to you, hey, we're trying to start running, that's great. Here's how Mo Farah trains. Why don't you start doing his workouts? Once again, you're going to fail. So from my perspective, when we talk about Toyota, we've got these 2 problems. We are talking about a company that's really too advanced, and we're talking about cars instead of speaking to people in a language that they understand. We're not using examples that really reach people where they are. So my goal today is to talk to you about lean without mentioning Toyota, without using any Japanese. There's not going to be any Muda or Muri. There's not going to be any Kanbans or Pokyokes. And I'm not going to use any jargon. We're not going to be talking about shining in 5S. I want to use a language that you can use with your people and your organizations that they can relate to and go, oh, I get it. And from my perspective, I used to be a former competitive runner. I used to be a coach, a high school cross-country coach, and a track coach. And from my perspective, a language that I understand is a language of fitness and athletics. And my feeling is most people have that sort of background, whether they're hardcore fitness people or they just go to the gym a couple times a week. I think that if we make parallels between fitness and lean, people go, oh, I get it. I understand what you're talking about. I understand why it makes sense. And so using that lens, I believe that there are 6 core values from lean that we can use to build an organization that is, to use my language, fitter. So here are the 6 principles. You'll be getting a PDF, so you don't have to write all these down, of course. And the first principle is actually committing to improvement. So if we use if we think about fitness, or if we think about lean, oftentimes organizations are built around Kaizen events. And so that to me is like going to the gym once a month or once a quarter or every 2 weeks or 3 weeks. If you go to the gym once every 3 weeks, you are not going to get fit. Lean and continuous improvement, fitness needs to be embedded into your daily routine. I found this, I did a screen grab off the web, and this just made me laugh. This is from, I don't know who it is, some kid who really loves his Frosted Flakes. And you can see that what he has done is embedded Frosted Flakes into his daily routine. It shows up everywhere because this is what he's really committed to. So the question is, how do we embed fitness into our daily routine, daily organizational routine, or our physical routine? Well, it means that you go to the gym every day, for example. Or it means that you start biking to work or taking the stairs at the office instead of using the elevator. It means that you walk to and from the supermarket if you live close enough to one. So you are building fitness into your daily life, not just going to the gym once a week or once a month. The same is true in continuous improvement. We need to build continuous improvement into the fabric of everyday work in the organization. And one of the most important ways that we can do that is to get rid of these things. This is actually a point that my colleague and friend, Mark Raven, who authored Lean Hospitals, has pointed out, that if you do a Google search for suggestion boxes, you get page after page after page of things that look like this. Every single suggestion box has a lock on it. And I'm not entirely sure why, because it seems like people think that good ideas are like wild animals and they have to be kept under lock and key or they might hurt you. So what do we want to do? Well, we want to make fitness and improvement part of the fabric of daily life. So we want to move to something like this: a simple Kaizen submission card, or an idea card or suggestion card, whatever you want to call it. It can be very simple. It's posted publicly. It could look like this, so that people see what's going on in the organization. They can see that improvement is being built into daily work, that it's no longer just something we do once a week, once a month, once a quarter. It's something that is part of the everyday life of the organization. It could be a little more complicated. This is another screenshot that shows improvement opportunities queued up in the corner. There's the pick chart with impact and difficulty, so if people are ranking them. There's the stuff that's in progress. And of course, most importantly, there's the celebration. Because if we want to build it into daily life, we need to celebrate, just like you would celebrate some sort of physical accomplishment. It also means that you can go as far as creating a wall of fame. This is a screenshot, a picture from NFI. They are a 3PL located in, among other places, California, and this is in their warehouse. You've got the wall of fame, and it shows people just how serious the company is about continuous improvement. So this is one way to weave it into the fabric of daily organization. But there's often this major impediment, and that is fear. Now, Dr. Deming talked about fear quite a bit, and I think that we often forget what fear means. In the Lean community, we've taken very seriously the notion that if you make improvements, you don't get fired. So we've eliminated perhaps the fear of layoffs. But there's all kinds of other fear. There's the fear of being ignored. There's the fear of being laughed at. There's the fear of failing. You know, I came up with this really neat idea and we tried it and I cost the company $5,000. There's a fear of not presenting it elegantly. Remember, maybe not everyone is a native English speaker, or not everyone is comfortable speaking in public, or not everyone is comfortable making a presentation to a manager or a supervisor. And so there's all this subtle fear that I think is an impediment to people really embracing and making a commitment to improvement. One other fear, of course, is, so we want to start to drive that out. We want to make people comfortable with making ideas, with trying changes. And that could be doing something like having the heroic failure award. One company has that each quarter. There's an award given. It's like $100 for a really good idea that just didn't work out. There's a company that has pizza parties for lessons, things that we've learned after someone's tried to make a change and it has or has not worked out. There's a pizza party, there's a celebration. Hey, we had a great learning opportunity. There's one other fear that I think is very important, and that is the fear of change. So we've all heard about this. There's books written on change management, more books than I can even think of. But what happens when people are faced with change, with dramatic change, my job is going to change because of this new way of working, is that people get afraid. And it activates what Seth Godin likes to call the lizard brain, or more commonly it's called the fight or flight syndrome. So we're faced with a lot of change and people are wary of it, and so they run away. Bob Maurer, who is a psychologist, PhD, and a professor at UCLA, wrote this wonderful book called One Small Step Can Change Your Life, the Kaizen Way. And his argument is that if we want people to change, we have to break it down into tiny, tiny, tiny little steps. And that the smaller the step, the less likely it is we're going to trigger that fight or flight syndrome. So how can we make the improvements, the changes, smaller so that people go, oh, that's totally fine, I can handle this. He uses an example of asking someone who is obese and needs to lose weight in this way. He says, listen, if you've got someone who weighs 350 pounds and doesn't do any exercise, you can't say, all right, you have to go to the gym 5 days a week and you have to start running 20 minutes or brisk walking 25 minutes a day. They're not going to do it. It's too much of a change. But if you said, I tell you what, tomorrow when you're watching TV, what I'd like you to do is stand up and walk in place for 2 minutes. That's it. And then the next day I want you to walk in place for 3 minutes. And then 4 minutes. And then in 2 weeks from now, what I'd like you to do is walk around the block once a day. We're now dealing with small changes that are unlikely to trigger the fight or flight. And so when we think about work, we want to do the same thing. As I said, I'm using the fitness metaphor, and the last thing we want to do is say, listen, you're going into a fitness program, you have to start lifting whatever this is, I don't know, 250 kilos or something. No, you start with something light. If you're planning on running a marathon, you don't start running 20 miles today. You start by running a half a mile or a quarter mile, or you start by walking. And I think, frankly, Paul Akers has really hit on something. If you're not familiar with him, he's really remarkable. And his book and his idea of 2-second lean is to say, listen, I'm not going to ask you to make these heroic changes. What I want you to do is be 2 seconds better tomorrow than you are today. That's it, just 2 seconds. How can you make your job 2 seconds faster, 2 seconds easier? That's not scary. That's something people can embrace. And if you do that every single day over 2 years, you're going to have a remarkably different company. So the second idea is increasing value, don't cut costs. The physical fitness metaphor for this is don't lose weight. Increase fitness, don't try to lose weight. Now, obviously, if you are this guy, you do need to lose some weight. But if all you do is focus on weight loss, you end up looking like this. Now, these women may be highly employable on the runways of Milan and Paris, but they are by no means healthy. They're gaunt, they're skinny, they could be anorexic and bulimic for all I know. Now, there's an organizational equivalent to this, right? You guys may or may not remember Chainsaw Al Dunlap. He was a big hero in the 90s. And Chainsaw Al would come into companies and he would slash costs. He'd fire people left and right. And he'd reap giant rewards because the stock price would go up because Wall Street said, hey, you lowered costs. That's terrific. But the problem is that he would eviscerate the company. And the best example of this is when in 1996 he was hired to fix Sunbeam. He came in 1996, he laid off half the employees, he cut a bunch of product lines that he thought were underperforming, and the stock price went up. 5 years later, the company was bankrupt. Because there was no increase in value created, it was only a cost-cutting exercise. And it turns out that most cost reduction programs within 3 years regress to where they were. Only about 10% are sustained. This comes from some research done by McKinsey and done by Accenture, by the way. And so what happens, of course, is that organizations will say, we have to get lean, we're going to cut costs. But they don't actually improve the way operations work. So they say, well, you know, we're going to lay people off, and Bob, I want you to do the job of you and Sarah. And by the way, we're not going to be catering lunches anymore, and we're cutting back on travel. And then 2 or 3 years later, when the economy turns around, all of a sudden you're catering lunches again, And now, Bob, you're overwhelmed, so you'll rehire Sarah or the new version of Sarah, who's not as skilled or as familiar with the work, and you start traveling more, and you're back to where you started. There's another real problem with focusing on cost reduction. The problem is that it is emotionally draining. It is an emotional dead end that no one gets excited about. No one comes to work saying, oh, right, I get to figure out how to cut costs today. This is a quote from a nurse manager at Franciscan St. Francis Healthcare in Indianapolis. And when Lean was originally presented to them, as she says, I thought we were supposed to come up with ideas for reducing costs, and I couldn't think of any. But when you explained that it was about saving time, making our work easier, and improving patient care, I realized I had a lot of ideas. And that, to me, is the epitome of the difference between cutting costs and increasing value. So what does increasing value look like? Let me give you a few examples. Here's one. This is Wild Things Gear. They make outdoor gear here in the United States. They're one of the very, very few companies that do that. They have a lean production facility in Vermont. But the really cool thing that they do is allow you to customize your jacket or whatever gear you buy. Color choices are usually made about 18 months before you ever get the product. Some guys, designers, are in a room, they have color forecasts, and someone says green and red and purple and this shade of yellow is going to be popular, and if you don't like it, you're out of luck. Also, you may notice that if you have one of these kinds of jackets, have you ever noticed that the chest pocket is always on the left side? And that's because 85% of the population is right-handed, so it makes sense to have it on the left side. And if you're lefty, you're sort of out of luck. So Ed Schmaltz, the president of this company, said, how can I help people get more value? And so he says, you can customize the jacket. You can choose the shell material. You can choose the shell color. You can have a hood or no hood. You can have different kinds of cuffs. You can put the chest pocket on the left side or on the right side. And as a result of this, they have, in an industry where the average closeout percentage in their inventory is something like 30 to 40%, he has less than 4% closeouts because he builds stuff that people want. Ed says it best, actually. He says, who am I to tell this customer his jacket is ugly? He will make whatever the customer wants. Here's another example. The supermarket in the Netherlands, Builder and de Klerk. So you think about supermarkets, how they're all laid out the same. These guys said, hey, listen, we have people coming home from work and they need to put food on the table. And instead of making them walk up and down the aisle, up and down the aisle, up and down the aisle, why don't we show them how to make something? So what you've got here is these islands with particular foods or particular meals. And you can see they have all the ingredients. It could be cheese and the vegetables and the pasta. It could have meat or fish. You can see that there are coolers of these things. There's a photo at the top of each that shows you what the dish looks like. And they even have recipe cards so that you know how to make the meal. So now you can walk in and get your shopping done a whole lot faster. Here's another example. Bespoke Bicycles in London. These guys are a beautiful, beautiful store, and they sell bicycles that cost as much as a car, between $10,000 and probably $22,000. It's a very competitive market, as you might imagine, getting people to part with that much money. So what do? They want to increase the value they add. So they have professional bike fitting. What's really interesting about this is you'll see the sensors on this woman who's being fitted. Those are motion capture sensors that they use in, let's say, in Hollywood for, let's say, Gollum, if you remember The Lord of the Rings. So they're able to digitize her motions and see where she's efficient and where she's inefficient, or the customer, in this case it's girl, of course, and design a bike and build the bike so that it fits her and her style just right. But it turns out that maybe her style is going to lead to underperformance or will lead to injury. So these guys also provide on-site, let's call it prehab instead of rehab. This is physical therapy to show people where their weaknesses are, where they're too tight, where they're not strong enough, where they're too weak, whatever it happens to be, and so that they can keep people healthy and enjoying their bike rides as much as possible. So these are consumer-oriented examples of increasing value. What does it look like in an internal facility or an internal thing that isn't customer-facing? This is a hospital. These statistics are from a hospital, in a children's hospital in Texas. Before they did any improvement, they would 16 weeks to schedule an MRI. It's a children's hospital, and if any of you have kids, you can imagine how you would feel if you were told, sure, I know your kid had some sort of issue. We'll see you in 4 months. You would never tolerate that. So the hospital, of course, just like most hospitals, is under enormous financial pressure. And they said, we're going to have to cut costs and we're going to have to lay off people. And the lean group in the imaging department said, hey, hang on a minute. Before we do that, can we try to improve the process? They cut the process, they improved the process, so now it is less than 2 weeks for a schedule, and anything that's urgent can be done within 2 days. Not only that, because they had higher utilization of the MRI machine, they were able to increase revenue by $5 million. So they've increased value by serving patients more quickly. And I think ultimately what you want to do when you start thinking about increasing value, what you want to do is take a look at process-oriented metrics. If you do that, you can start to really focus on providing more value to customers. In the case of, let's say, that supermarket, the process-oriented metric is how long it takes a customer to fill a shopping basket. If they can improve that, if they can reduce it, they're going to order more, to add more value. In your internal departments here, HR might want to take a look at the percentage of new hires that have everything ready on their first day. In product development, it might be the percentage of sales samples that are delivered on time, or the time from concept to first prototype. In finance, it might be the percentage of accounts receivable less than 90 days. These KPIs are process-oriented, so therefore they're leading indicators rather than lagging indicators. It gets you out of the trap of looking at revenue, at looking at costs, and instead enables you to focus on improvement and increasing value delivered to the customer, either internal or external. Third idea is what I call thinking horizontally. Now, the physical fitness equivalent to this is training for the event, specific training for the event that you're going to. So if you're planning on running a marathon, you're going to have one kind of training event or training plan. If you are going to become a power lifter, you're going to have a whole totally different kind of training plan. And if you're going for the CrossFit Games, you're going to do something entirely different again. But when you look at most organizations, they do all their training, metaphorically speaking, the same. You've got your product line, you look at all your customers and you say, this is how, in this particular example, this is how all the product flows through our functional silos, and we deal with all of our customers the same way. And that, I think, is a mistake. That's like saying, I'm powerlifting and I'm going to train as though I'm only going to train as though I'm running a marathon, even though I'm going for powerlifting or I'm going for strength, or I'm going for rehab of a knee injury or back pain or whatever it is. You've got to target, you've got to train specifically for what your goal is. And so this is really what you want to be looking at. What kind of customers do you have? Oops, I have a typo here. It should be customer type 2, customer type 3. My bad. So you want to have a strategy specific for those customers, and that strategy works through the various functional silos, and you have customer-specific KPIs. Now, a concrete example of this was actually my first job when I was at ASICS. I was in product. My first job at ASICS, actually, the footwear company, was to become, well, we didn't use the words, but essentially become the value stream manager for our specialty running and triathlon shops. It turns out that running triathlon shops have entirely different needs than a chain like Foot Locker or Sports Authority or Dick's Sporting Goods. They need different kinds of financial help. For example, the credit requirements that we would have for the big guys landed these small stores on credit hold all the time, and they couldn't order their product. They're also terrible. They don't have enough money to order product and schedule their product, and they're not as sophisticated in forecasting their product needs. So they would always run out of product in the middle of the year. And as you might imagine, they would try to fill in with a particular shoe, and we'd say, sorry, we don't have it. So we created a special, we called it a shoe bank in the warehouse. We picked our 2 most popular models for them, and we stocked the core sizes, which would be 9, 10, and 11 for men, 7, 8, and 9 for women. And we just stocked the most popular color, and the only people who could access it was the running specialty accounts. This is really important because that meant they could call up on one day and say, hey, could you send me a size 10? And we say, sure, we got it, no problem. Now, this meant, of course, that the finance department had to set, when they looked at our inventory numbers each month, they would separate this out and say, this inventory we're going to look at separately. We're going to deal with it specially, because if we need to close it out at the end of the season, it's easy to do because it's the popular shoe in a popular color. We had a special customer service desk just to support them. Our 2 best customer service agents would serve them and take care of their phone calls and their needs. We had special advertising. We handled logistics differently. We shipped our product to them a week before or 10 days before we would ship it to the big chain stores, because if you send it to Foot Locker, Foot Locker automatically goes $5 off. We would give it to the specialty run guys so they could sell it at full price for a week and a half. So that's an example of how we took a look at our value streams by customer, and we started to support them in a way that was meaningful for them. You could also go whole hog and just reorganize by value stream as opposed to working through keeping your functional silos. This is Aluminum Trailer Company in Indianapolis. These guys make, not surprisingly, aluminum trailers. And they have 3 different kinds of customers. They've got the people who want the off-the-shelf basic aluminum boxes that you hitch to your car or a truck. They make semi-custom things that, like a food truck, for example. Food truck is basically a food truck, but there's some minor modifications they'll make. And then there are the entire custom operations like a mobile SWAT team or a mobile hospital, that sort of thing. And they make those as well. Each of those customers has different kinds of needs. And they physically reorganize. They used to have the functional departments who hardly ever talk to each other. They send emails back and forth from customer service to sales, from sales to engineering or operations, then back to customer service. And they would never talk to each other. They reorganized, and now this happens to be, I believe this is Team 1, which handles the off-the-shelf stuff. And so you have customer service, you've got sales, you've got engineering, you've got operations, you've got finance, who all sit together to take care of that one customer base. As a result of this change, they've reduced the lead time from production, aluminum trailer production, from 8 weeks down to 2 weeks. So an enormous impact and improvement in their ability to serve their customers. The 4th idea is standard work. And this really is, think of it as best practices. So if you are training, as I said, I used to be a running coach. If you're training for a marathon, there's some basic things that you want to do. You want to start with smaller miles and end up with bigger miles. You want to introduce some speed work. You want to introduce some cross training. If you are doing some sort of rehab, there are certain, for back injury or knee injury or hip injury, there are certain things that you want to do, the way you train, how hard you push yourself, how often you do it, things like that. Most of us, when we think about standard work in an organization, we think of this stuff. This is a handout actually from TWI during World War II. You can see about that old creaky old font. So we tend to think about standard work in terms of TWI, and this is how you do it. We think about it for frontline stuff. This is how you tighten the lug nut. This is how you operate the punch press. Okay. You can bring it, of course, to the office. So this is also from NFI, this is the third-party logistics company, and this is the standard work that the customer service people are using. It's laminated, it's not in binders, it's on the wall, and the standard work is laminated. If they're not sure if the work is yet standardized, if it's the best way to do it, they don't laminate, it's just it's a bare sheet of paper. And what I think is really cool, you can see in this picture and in the next one, that the standard work is expressed by the customer service people in the language that they would use. Oh my, oh no, stop everything. Oh gosh, how do I handle this? Oh darn, the CSR is not here, how do I process this? So they're answering their own questions in their own language. But standard work doesn't just apply to people who are doing repetitive tasks. These are manually repetitive tasks like operating a drill press, or electronic repetitive tasks like processing expense reports. It can also be used at a managerial and executive level. This is the standard work board, or part of it, I could only get down to 11, for the COO of Stanford Medical Center. And you'll notice there's start of week, during the week, and the end of week, and there's 11 items. And the green and red dots indicate they're magnets and they flip around. They indicate whether he's done it or he hasn't done it. So we can see very clearly what he's missed and what he hasn't missed. This is mirrored by the standard work boards for his direct reports. This is one of his direct reports. You can see she has the daily standard work, the weekly standard work, the monthly standard work, and the quarterly standard work. So these are all the things that they want to ensure that they get done during those weeks. This is the standard work for supervisors at JD Machine, which is in Salt Lake City. So you can see there's 3, 6, 9 supervisors. You've got your swim lanes. They know what they're supposed to cover on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And their topics range from things like winning and losing to success review to cost or quality or safety or employees, team huddle, and whatnot. So you can see there, and these are laminated cards. They're also magnetic. I think they're magnetic. When they do their standard work, the manager gets to put the green card in the spot and cover up the red card or the red blank. So they have to manually put it in there to show that they have in fact done it. What's really important about this idea of standard work, in addition to providing leadership and providing a cadence to the week, is that it helps people from getting bogged down in what James Hereford at Stanford Medical Center called administrivia. Instead of getting caught up by emails and meetings and whatnot, they can be sure they take care of their really important things. There's one other point here about standard work that I think we can't underestimate, and that's this. Whoops. There's a woman named Sheena Iyengar. She wrote a book called The Art of Choosing. I used to have a slide of that. I'm not sure where it went. And she pointed out that if you have too many options, you get overwhelmed. You can't make a decision about what to do. So if you walk in and you keep a to-do list, and I suspect most of you do, and you've got 75 things on your to-do list, you end up being paralyzed. You think, oh, I can do this or this or this. This is really important, but this is urgent. This is for my boss. This is for a customer. And you end up freezing and basically doing email because at least it's something you know you can take care of. So what we want to do is reduce the number of options. And that is precisely what standard work does. If you think back to James Hereford's board, these are the things that I have to take care of today. I don't have to think about it. Therefore, I'm not going to be paralyzed by the multitude of choices that I have. It turns out, by the way, that you don't actually need to get a PhD. Sheena Iyengar, who talked about this per choice paralysis, did get a PhD at Stanford. Turns out oh, there she is. It turns out this knew it all along. This is a screenshot from many years ago. Too much choice is just overwhelming. There's a wonderful article. Why am I showing President Obama? There's a wonderful article by Michael Lewis in Vanity Fair magazine from about 2 years ago. He profiled Obama. And Obama said, you know, I've got 2 color suits. I got gray and I've got blue. And I basically have 2 or 3 color ties, gray, blue, blue, red, and gray. And everything goes with everything, because when I'm faced with so many decisions during the course of the day that are really consequential, the last thing I want to do is waste my time trying to make decisions about what shirt, what suit, and what tie to wear. So standard work, it will give you the greater ability to not get bogged down in administrivia, but to act and act quickly on the important things. The next idea that I want to introduce is visual management. Of course, you guys know what visual management is. The fitness analog to this is, well, the mirrors in a gym. Why do they have mirrors in a gym? I mean, it could, I suppose, be fair if you want to check yourself out, see how good you look, you want to check out the cute guy or girl sitting next to you. Maybe that's what your goal. But primarily it's there because if you're working out, you want to be able to see what you're doing when you're doing it to ensure that you're doing it right. If you are doing squats with a barbell, you want to be sure that you are in the right position so that you don't blow your knees out. We do the same thing with all of our electronic trackers, right? Your Fitbits and your Jawbones and your Apple Watches and your Fuel Bands. This is designed to give you feedback on what you're doing as you're doing it, right? It's no good to find out at the end of the day that you only walked 1,000 steps. It's no good to find out after you finish running that you didn't go as far as you wanted to go. It doesn't do you any good to find out after you've run that you want to run for 45 minutes, but you only ran for 32 minutes. You want to have the stopwatch with you while you're running. So there's real-time feedback so you can make real-time changes. But if you go into most offices, this is what you see. These people ahead or behind? I don't know. Is there work quality or not quality? I don't know. So what we want to do is create an environment in which we're able to see the work. Now, in a manufacturing facility, it's usually much easier, right? Here's a production cards for, this is a golf club manufacturer. We've got today coming up in blue, we got tomorrow in pink, and so we know exactly what we're supposed to do, and we can see by hour or by 2 hour block whether we're on target or not on target. But we can do the same thing in the office with just a little bit of creativity. This is an invoice processing department. You can see the invoices. They know approximately what how long it takes to process an invoice. They break it up into 2 hour buckets, and you're able to see if there are any invoices left over from the previous bucket that people are falling behind, and that's a signal that they need some help. This is from Theta Care. They don't do football actually, but they are in Appleton, Wisconsin, so they really do like their football. And when their home games are what they call the educational events at Theta Care headquarters. They also do away games, which are educational events at their member hospitals. So across the top, you can see all the educational events they have coming up, and at the bottom or all down the side, you have all the tasks that go into it, with the date that it needs to be done. When the date comes up, it either goes green or it goes red. And anyone can see the board, so that even if the person in charge of organizing it is out of town or sick or something like that, people know exactly what needs to get done. So you have a very clear visual picture while the preparation is going on of what is happening and where the process stands. Are we ahead or behind? This is a nurse at Kaiser Permanente. Kaiser did research and found that most medication errors occur when nurses are interrupted. This is not a big surprise. The nurse is working on dispensing a medicine, and someone says, hey, do you know where Dr. So-and-so is? And then they go back to their task, and they accidentally put in adult heparin instead of child heparin, or they put in the wrong dosage size, or they put in the wrong drug. So they now have what they call their no interruption wear. Those fluorescent green sashes, if you see a nurse wearing that, you are not allowed to talk to the nurse unless the building's on fire. This is one of my favorite examples. This is a law firm in San Francisco. It's not actually a law firm. This is the court board in the law firm. They've got 6 people in the firm, 7 actually, including managing partner. In the yellow box on the left, you can see the lawyers' names. So you've got swim lanes going across. In the red box in the middle, they work sort of in an agile methodology, so they've got a 2-week sprint. So that is the work that needs to be done over the next 2 weeks. And they're all written on these cards, so people are able to see what their work is coming up. In the little orange circles on the cards, and although you can't see it, I'll tell you what it is, that's the estimated number of days it's going to take each person to do that particular task. This is a law firm that does patent law, so in a way they're cranking out widgets, although it's intellectual widgets or knowledge widgets. And so they know that each stage takes this number of days. And what happens is, if the task is taking longer than, say, 3 days, the partner can say, oh, Diana's having some problems here, I better see what's up. If Diana is able to finish it in less than 3 days, then the partner can say, wow, Diana's skills have improved. It's time to give her a raise, because they don't work on the billable hour, they work on a flat fee. So he's now able to see that her quality and her speed has improved. The green box up to the right shows all the work that's out in the future beyond the 2-week horizon. So they're always able to pull that forward if they want to. And then the blue box at the top left, those 3 columns are critical stages in a patent application, whether it's awaiting review or filing soon or whatever the other stage is. So those cards will move around, and at any given time, any attorney can see what the status is of the various client projects. There's no ambiguity. If a client calls and says, hey, where is my application? What's the status of my application for X, Y, and Z? No one has to go hunting through 100 emails or look through filing cabinets. It's all right up on the board. Hickson Architecture in Ohio, they run most of their projects. Actually, they run all their projects with very elaborate boards. It's not worth going into all this, but just to show you that when you're doing a construction project, this could be a building, this could be a hospital, it could be really big things, not just a single-family home. They are able to see what's going on at any given day. And this actually it's a fisheye view, 2 walls of James Hereford, the COO of Stanford Medical Center. This is his visual management. For me, it's a little bit overwhelming, but it works for him. He's able to see everything that he is tracking or needs to be tracking. So the last idea is coaching, or what I call the coaching triangle. My belief is that there are really three elements to effective coaching. There's participation, there's going and seeing, and there's showing respect. And when you look at all the great coaches, these are three common elements. A guy like Bill Belichick, and by the way, for those of you who do follow football, I grew up in New York or New Jersey, so I'm a New York Jets fan, and so to show a picture of Bill Belichick just kills me. But the truth is, he's an amazing coach. And when you look at him, he embodies this stuff. He participates. He actually is not only in the practices, but he will show players how to tackle, how to run a route, how to catch, how to use their hands to block, whatever it happens to be. He goes and sees. He's at the practice every single day. If you have a physical trainer in fitness, you want your physical trainer to participate. Now, that doesn't mean that the physical trainer has to lift the same amount of weight as you, but the physical trainer is going to show you how to do a particular exercise. The physical trainer is more effective when he or she shows up at your house or at the gym to meet you rather than just phoning it in or emailing in the workout. And of course, the physical trainer is watching you to see how are you doing so that he or she can make corrections in your form. Spin class, if anyone has ever taken a spin class, there's a reason that the spin instructor is on the bike in front of you, because they have to participate and they have to go and see what you're doing. The last element, of course, is showing respect. And showing respect, I think, is well, actually, I'll come to showing respect in a minute because I forgot I should mention a quote from Art Byrne's book, The Lead Turnaround. He talks about how you can't send a memo about improvement. You've got to lead it. You have to show it by example. You have to do it on the shop floor. You cannot just mail it in. And in fact, this is Paul Akers, the president of FastCap. He shows people how to clean the toilets because you have to learn by doing and lead by doing. The last idea about showing respect is something that I think really Mike Rother nailed better than anyone in his book Toyota Kata with the 5 questions. The idea here is that it's very important for you not to give people answers. We have to show respect for their ability to learn, to grow, and to improve on their own. We give them answers, they don't grow. We're not respecting their ability to improve, and we're not respecting their desire to improve, to be able to do their own job better. And if you haven't read Toyota Kata, it's a fantastic book. I really recommend it. Carolyn Brodsky, a friend of mine who runs Sterling Rope, which is I think it may be the only American-based manufacturer of technical ropes for climbing, for arborists, for firefighters, and so on, says that the most powerful improvement tool we have is our employer's brain. And I think that we often forget that we've got to engage, that we have to engage their brains in order to really take advantage of, to build our company and make a truly fit organization. So as I promised, I wanted to finish in about 45 minutes to have plenty of time. And let's open it up to questions. Here's my contact information if anyone does want to talk or follow up with me. But in the meantime, I would love to hear what questions you have on your mind. Thanks so much.
Great. Thanks, Dan. And now we will review any questions. So if you do have any questions, please submit them on the right side of your screen. Here's one. The fitness analogy is nice, but I don't think it will resonate with my company. What should I do?
That's a terrific question. The fitness analogy works for me. It doesn't have to work for you. Fitness makes sense for me, but maybe you could talk about art or about music, or you could talk about cooking. Because I believe that if you look at continuous improvement in any area, in any kind of realm, any domain, you can find the same principles that Toyota has exemplified in Lean. You can see the application to how you, let's say, become a better cook. So you're going to have standard work for your knife skills, for example. You're going to want to have a commitment to improvement. You don't want to just cook once a month. You want to be able to work on recipes and practice your skills on a regular basis and so on. So find something that makes sense for you personally or for your organization and the culture there. And I think what you'll find is that people will go, oh yeah, that makes total sense. I get it. Does that help? I don't know if you're able to answer on this, but hopefully it does.
Okay, great. Here's another one. We struggle with the sustain part of Lean 5S, just like most of us struggle to sustain our fitness gains. Any suggestions?
Boy, that's a great one. There are a couple of ideas I have here. And the first is the notion of, obviously, we want to create a habit out of it. 5S is something that should be done every day, not every other day, not once a week. We want to embed it into our work. So if you had a standard time for it, 5S happens in the first 15 minutes or, after the first half hour of work, whatever it happens to be, everyone stops, period, end of story, and everyone at the same time cleans. And organizes, sets in order, the whole 9 yards. I think that's a huge thing. Just like it's easier to get to the gym and maintain fitness if you say every Thursday, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 2 o'clock or 5 o'clock or in the morning, whatever it is, I'm going to go to the gym. The other thing I think is important is this comes from the ideas presented by Charles Duhigg. He wrote a terrific book called The Power of Habit. The Power of Habit, his name again is Duhigg, D-U-H-I-G-G. And he points out that habits are formed when there is a trigger and there's a reward. So can we create a trigger to help this start, the 5S start? And the trigger might be a bell ringing. It might be music playing. It might be someone walking around saying it's 5S time. That's, to me, a little bit heavy-handed, but you get the idea. And then I think we want a reward. We're all animals after all, and there's a reason that rats run through mazes to get to a piece of cheese because there's a reward. I'm not saying that people are rats, but we tend to treat adults and ourselves particularly with sticks and never carrots. So what would happen if we had carrots? Like, what would happen if you had I'm making this up now, a wall calendar that showed it's a year at a glance, and it shows the days, successive days of completed 5S, sort of like you might have a accident-free days thing if you work in a shop floor. So we've had 18 consecutive days of terrific 5S. Let's make it 19, people, and we put it up on a calendar. We mark off the days, and people get to see the streak going, and that's really rewarding. And maybe when you hit 30, or 60, or 50, or 100, or whatever it is, you celebrate. There's a pizza party for people. There's movie night, you name it. But let's give people a reward, not just the intrinsic psychological reward of, hey, we rock, we just did it 25 days in a row, that's a new record for us, but also some sort of tangible reward like pizza or beer or whatever. So there are a couple of ideas for you.
Okay, and keeping with the fitness theme, what kind of improvements would be the equivalent of starting with a short run if you're training for a marathon?
Great question. And I think what we want to do there is leave it up to the individual operator to figure out what the improvement is, the small improvement. So I'm going to go back for a minute to Paul Akers and his 2-second lean. What improvement can they make so that their job is 2 seconds faster or easier today than yesterday? I think for you to try to do that is crazy because each operator knows what bothers him or her. I was just working at a client yesterday where this woman works in shipping and she has to weigh boxes. Her scale is relatively small, and so it blocks sometimes the digital readout of how heavy the box is. It turns out that the digital readout there's actually a cord, and it can be separated from the scale. So now we've moved it. She moved it over. So now she doesn't have to bend down 65 times a day or whatever it is to read the digital readout. And she came up with that. I think that as an organization, so that's on a personal level. On an organizational level, what I would do is start with something really simple like suggestion cards. There's one client actually that I just started working with. We just built a Kaizen board with to-do, doing, and done columns, and we made up cards, and it's all version 1.0, of course, but now people can come up with any ideas and slap it up there, talk to their manager, supervisor, and start pushing it forward. And this is a small improvement We're not talking about Kaizen events. We're not talking about value stream mapping. We're not talking about creating cells and breaking walls down and moving machinery. We're talking about just getting people on a daily basis to go, something bugs me. How can I make that go away? And that, to me, is really where you want to start, because people are not, in general, not in the habit of thinking, hey, this company wants my brains, not just my hands. I should, if there's something that bugs me, I have not just the power, but really the responsibility to fix that. So that, to me, that's where I like to start always, not with 5S, not with classes, not with workshops, but just let's start getting people to think, how can I make an improvement? Something bugs me. And that, I think, is the first step, the equivalent of running, walking around the block to prep for a marathon.
Okay, great. Looks like we've got one more question. Are you saying that we should get rid of all Chinese and all references to Toyota?
So I'm putting my stake in the ground all the way to the extreme and saying, why do we want to make it harder for people to learn, to accept and embrace lean, by forcing them to learn words in another language? Do we really need to say Gemba when we could say shop floor or workplace? Do we really need to say Kaizen when we could say improvement? So I'm taking an extreme position more to make a point than anything else. If your organization is comfortable using it, by all means, go right ahead and do it. Maybe you want to do it, or maybe Spanish will work better, or German, or French. But feel free to use Japanese if it resonates and people are okay with it. But I see so many companies where there's these workshops and classes, and people are trying to remember what the difference is between Mura and Muda and Muda. It's hard to pronounce, much less to remember what the differences are. And I think, why make it harder? So what I'm suggesting is use whatever language is easiest. Use whatever terms are easiest for you. And don't worry about whether it's Japanese or not. The goal here is to create an organization that is profoundly customer-focused and has embedded, woven continuous improvement into the DNA of what you do, of the organization, so it affects what you do every single day. What language you use is entirely up to you. Make up words, use Pig Latin, couldn't matter less. But I think you shouldn't be married to the idea of saying, well, it's lean, it came from Toyota, so let me start talking about Kanban. Who the hell needs the word Kanban? I mean, again, if it works for you, terrific, but come up with a signal card, great, or an inventory management card. That's good enough. Toyota chose Japanese words. They are a Japanese company and everyone speaks Japanese. That doesn't mean we have to do the same thing. That was a really good question. Thank you.
Okay, great. And that looks like that was the last question. So thank you, everyone, for all your questions. And thank you, Dan, for a very insightful presentation. This brings our webinar to a close. Our next scheduled webinar will be on Thursday, March 10th, titled, So You've Done Lean, but Quality is Still an Issue? 5 Proven Solutions, with Ann C. Graham. Please visit AME.org under the AME Events and Training tab for more information and to register. Please don't forget to fill out the short survey that will be in your inbox. Thank you, everyone, for attending, and have a productive day.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.